In the name of Allah, the Beneficent and Merciful, who came in the person of Master Fard Muhammad, I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and I bear witness that the most honorable Elijah Muhammad is the exalted Christ, and the honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is our divine reminder. I greet my brothers and sisters in the greeting words of peace. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam, sir.
Alaikum assalam.
The next topic we're going to deal with is the death perspective. When we hear death, everyone doesn't have the same functioning working definition of death or the same understanding of death. Death can mean on different levels of reality. You have biological death, you have psychological death, you have spiritual death, and symbolic death. Death, in the etymology of the word, means to pass away or be extinguished or to not exist. So when we deal with their perspective, everyone has their perspective. The way they view life, the way they understand an event, the way they interpret experiences, or form of opinions. So when we're discussing death or we're talking about death, it can be an ongoing debate because everyone's going to have their own perspective. When you look at the word perspective, it means the root of it is spect, to see. How do a person see a thing? How do you see or understand a thing or reality? So when we're talking about the death perspective, each and every one of us have our own perspective or functioning working definition that we apply when we hear the term death. So if someone want to give me their perspective of death or how they see death. Okay, I'll go.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Well, like you said, it has different meanings depending on the content that you're using it as. So, one aspect of death may be, like they say, the killing of the old man into the new man. So, it could be the way you act or carry yourself, self improvement, then you change how you carry yourself, or the death of a habit, not necessarily a bad habit, but maybe just something that you you were doing that you no longer want to do, um, to better yourself. So you like kill off that habit. So you like put that habit to death. So that's one aspect of it.
Okay.
Assalamu
Wa alaikum salam. Anyone else?
Okay. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Um, when I guess, like most of us, when we hear the word death, we think of somebody dying, you know, immediately. And that's true, that is one way to look at it. But there's another way to look at it when we're talking about the death of our people. And that death is falling into whatever slum they're in and never coming out of it. But they're still living, but they're
Right.
still dead. And that's the way I see it. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Because if we look at the different schools of thought, Christianity, Islam, People say, I don't have a religion, I'm spiritual. So we'll say spirituality, African tradition, Buddhism. They all have their perspective of death. So we can't say they're wrong if their perspective is not ours. In the Nation of Islam, when we speak of death, or we has been taught that uh, there's no coming back after physical death, and that heaven and hell are conditions of life, when in the church or in Christianity, they believe after they physically die that they're going to go to this place called heaven or hell. But that's their perspective. So they're going to get judged based on their thought process and their school of thought. So other school of thoughts are going to get uh, judged by their understanding, because everyone, even in the Nation of Islam, everyone's understanding of a thing might not be the same. We might agree, or even would agree to disagree. But when we deal with death in this perspective, let's say uh psychological, because we know biologically the death is the physical body, no life in it, and you're considered
Right. There's a
dead.
biological and a
Right,
psychological, yeah.
right. So psychologically, a loss of identity, hope, purpose, or confidence. Loss of identity, we can die in who we are or how we see ourselves, positive or negative. And so when it comes to a psychological death, we say a person is mentally dead, blind, deaf, or dumb. They mentally dead. Or we might say they spiritually dead. Why? Because to be dead or dealing with death can mean non-productive. It can also mean suffering. And so if we're if I die to who I am, there's a cause to the effect. So what happens after I die to who I say I am, or that death? I lose hope. I lose purpose. I lose confidence. That is psychological death. It could be a momentary thing, a temporary thing, death, or it could become a long-term mental illness. You understand where I'm coming from?
I do, yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so spiritually, uh, separation from a higher consciousness, truth, or God. When I was in the church, and you say you got saved, and then you start doing things other than what
Mhm.
they determination of save is, they said you backslid, you know, or
Mhm.
or you lost your connection to God. Uh, and so they consider you dead spiritually. So spiritually, situations and circumstances can destroy us from within, destroy that positive energy, destroy that conscious level, to where, have you known people or seen people that might be in the church, they might be in the mosque, they might be in the synagogue, but soon as something happened to shake their spirit or to kill their spirit, they die, become non-productive, and go back into a death style lifestyle, and become other than their own self. Or
Right.
even we have done it. I can only speak for me.
Hmm.
I've been there before, you know? So what is your perspective on spiritual death? How do you see or understand spiritual death?
But I want to use a scenario similar to that, okay? Because um, people do die in their spirits. I know someone now who I can consider spiritually dead. Although before they fell off, and they were thought to be connected to God, okay? But then when they fell off, now they can't get back to what's right. I'm going to say it that way. So when I see them, I know they're spiritually dead because nothing positive, nothing correct, nothing matters. Okay? They're just no to everything. They're just dead. They're numb. Usually when people say they're numb, they're you know, they're saying they just feel dead. And so I don't know in that case how to bring someone out of that. You know, what words do you say to them to bring them out of that spiritually dead state that they're living? You know,
Yeah.
I don't know, and I've been thinking about it and trying, and then it's at a point where I'm saying, you know what? Okay, it is what it is, and they are how they are, and leave it alone. But you hate to see your people walking around dead.
Right.
How is a person dead but alive? You know, that's the question.
Right.
They're dead but they're alive.
Well, if you think about it, look at it, we can only provide resources and the proper information, books, tapes with the internet. Now you can guide them to uh things that they can watch, study, but the reality of it all is a person has to have the will and desire to live again spiritually, mentally. And because you can't save someone drowning if they're fighting against you. I don't know if you
Mm-hmm.
ever try to save anyone in the water, but if they fighting, they can end up drowning you. So it is with life. When someone dies within themselves, uh, and start suffering, they can fight against someone trying to provide mental, spiritual help. Some people get so caught up into the grave, spiritual grave, and that grave could be they past. That grave that they're buried in could be past situation, hurt and pain, to where when they look up from that uh, spiritual death casket, they see life, but in their mind, that grave is constantly pulling them down, sucking them down. So when we get caught up, because I went through a stage of depression and everything, and I was dumb enough to listen to all sad music. And have you ever been in that situation where you going through something, you listen to the worst music that you can possibly listen to? You watch the worst things on TV or whatever that you can possibly. Why? Because you become comfortable in that situation or in that feeling or in that emotion to where it overtakes you and it becomes you, and that becomes your grade. So only thing we could do, they say life and death is in the power of the tongue, right?
Of the
So if
tongue.
life and
Right,
death is in the
right.
power of the tongue, if there's material that you can read, like we got self-improvement, right? Self-improvement, rise above emotion, study. If you
Mm-hmm.
got the book, or if you uh get some of the knowledge from the study guide, find something to just center it in a text or something to where they can read it
Mm-hmm.
for themselves. Because a lot of
Okay.
people listen to you, but they don't hear you.
Right.
You
Right.
can be talking to someone to motivate them, to encourage them and inspire them, but it doesn't register with them. Why? Because there's something in within them that blocks out or fight against
Okay.
outside uh help. You ever, especially
Mm-hmm.
with your children, you try to tell them what's good for
Yeah.
them, and they ain't hearing that. You try to tell them how to handle situations, they ain't hear. You try to tell them how to do their finances, they don't hear none of that.
Mm-hmm. But that's why they say you speak life into your children.
Right,
You know, there's a such thing as you speak life into people, or you could speak negative. You
right,
know, hey.
right, right.
So,
Uh, Sis Khalila, you got anything you want to say towards that?
I was just thinking about how when you say death spiritually, sometimes it's things that have been done to people in like in the church or the mosque or the temple, traumatic things, or they have a lot of things happen in life like death, like a lot of people might pass away or get sick or however it may be. And so they question, why is this happening? You know, why is all this happening to me? And or their faith is in a person,
Right,
or and so when that person disappoints them or the people in that organization disappoints them, then they lose their spirituality because it's not focused on where it should be. So
right,
they have that disappointment. So then they go by the wayside. I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to go to church. I don't believe in that. You know, God wouldn't do this, or you know, they get off track
right,
that way.
right. And
mm-hmm.
and death, even physical death, it happens over time. You can start smoking and drinking at an early age, not knowing that it's called it's a term called duration suicide. It happens over a time span of you constantly doing something or something constantly happen to where uh the ends of it is death. There's a scripture say the wages of sin is death. Sin is transgression against the laws of God, right? So when you're not eating properly, when you are not doing certain things, you are transgressing against the law. The laws of God is not just the Ten Commandments or the restricted laws. There's universal laws. You reap what you sow is a law. Do unto others as you want them to do unto you is a law. And so when we transgress, go against these laws over time, through the duration of time, we're killing ourselves mentally and spiritually, and which stress can lead to physical death. Mental illness can lead to stress, anxieties, all these things can take place over time to where if you don't understand the cause to the effect and remove yourself from situations or circumstances from around people, then they can help dig your grave for you. Am I making sense?
Yeah. Yes.
Because someone can be physically alive but disconnected from society, from the church, from the mosque, and they could be there, but they're mentally and spiritually disconnected from those things. But what we do oftentimes when we're uh, fall into a certain state of death being non-productive, when things are non-productive, we stay in it with a hope that something gonna change. We stay in it with a desire that something gonna change, something gonna all of something happen, and people gonna change, situations in that gonna change. Then when it don't, expectation is the mother of disappointment. Instead of us
Mm.
saying, you know what, I gotta step back. You know what, I need a break. You know what, I gotta separate myself from this. Why? Until you gain balance. See, we talk about resurrection of the mental, spiritual dead, but we don't never apply the resurrecting factor to ourselves. What happens when we get depressed? Uh, Depression, grief, betrayal, hopelessness. This create inner death. Healing can become a form of resurrection. What happens when we fall into these emotional stages of death to where we can't find the reality to resurrect ourselves? We're getting
Mm.
all these tools to resurrect other people. We got to go out in the community. Well, we got to do this here. Oh, we got to bring somebody. We got to do this here. We can think of all the ways to resurrect outside Walking Dead,
Mm-hmm.
but can't internalize it and heal and resurrect ourselves.
Mm.
So, what do you think when it comes to these this reality called death, and let's say the hereafter? When we're talking about mental and spiritual death, how do you see the hereafter? Because we know we've been tied in the hereafter is after you die, you go off to this place called heaven or paradise or this here. But they never talk about the hereafter when it comes to spiritual or mental death. How do y'all see the hereafter?
Mm.
For me, and I'll just say it real quick because I have to ready to get off, but I think sometimes before, like for me, the hereafter was coming into Islam. So growing up, it was like the Christian. It was one time I was studying with Jehovah Witness. So you are studying this, like the Easter Bunny and Christmas and all that. So you go through all that teaching growing up, but then when you get to teachings where it makes sense, it you can say, okay, this makes sense with that because the Easter bunny having eggs don't make sense. The man coming down a chimney to all the houses in one night, that don't make sense. Mary having a baby but never been with a man, that don't make sense. So when you start hearing the reality that makes sense, the religion, the spirituality, whatever you may want to call it, that makes sense to me, that's like the hereafter
Okay.
because it's like an awakening and you get a understanding and you want to learn more. That's what I'm
Well, what about you, Sister Angela?
I don't know. I think I look at it a little different. I see the hereafter. I want to see it like they painted in the Bible.
Uh,
That would be beautiful. But I think my reality of that is the hereafter is what I instill in my kids, and they carry it on. So that hereafter lasts forever. And their kids, they carry on the things that was instilled in them, and just
Right.
that type of thing. Um, but that's just the way I see it at this point. Not saying that you know it's not another way, because we all want to know that the hereafter is that we all remember, because that's really what it is, being
Right.
remembered. You
Right.
know, so um, so that's the whole thing. That's why we make this life good, so that after this life, someone after you're gone, the hereafter will carry on that somebody remember you.
Right.
And they speak
Right.
good, and they speak well of you. You know, and that's life. But it is best when you're gone and people speak bad of you.
Right.
You know,
True.
that there's no life in that. There's no life
Right.
to continue.
Right.
Yeah, that's how I see
And then you look at the word here, after. Here, where?
it.
Where you at in the present. After what? After you overcome situations and circumstances. After you wake up
Right.
to and gain a knowledge of self or how to come out of a situation or circumstance. Here, after those things that take place. Here, after the depression, after the rejection, after the grief, after the betrayal, after all that, here, then you can have peace of mind, and you can live again.
Peace of mind.
So I want to thank y'all for
Right.
coming on to your Tuesday night study cipher. I appreciate everyone. Um, so we're gonna close out in prayer. Uh, prayer. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the beneficent, the merciful, Master of the day of judgment, which we now live. The alone do we serve, the alone do we beseech for aid. Guide us on the right path, the path of those whom thou hast bestowed favor, and not on the path of those who go astray. Ameen. Assalamu
I mean,
alaikum. Assalamu alaikum.